Welcome to Gary Talks. I've ranked all sorts of things with music. My favorite soundtrack, favorite hair metal. I recently did favorite albums of Bon Jovi. But now I'm going to try something a little more difficult. Instead of ranking a band that has 15, 20 albums or something like that, or even ranking a genre like hair metal, which probably had 100 albums, 200, something like that to choose from, I'm going to try to rank a decade. We're going to talk about my top 10 albums of the 1970s.
Gary Talks Music. Gary Talks Music. Gary Talks Music.
The 70s were a really, really fun decade of music. There was great, what's now considered classic rock. There was a lot of great classic country. It's when country to me was still country. There was disco, which I don't hate disco. I like disco. There was just a lot of fun pop, sugar, bubblegum music. But these 10 albums, I think most people could agree, if they're not in their top 10, these are all classic albums. Now, I gave myself a couple rules. First of all, I can only have one artist each time, because no one wants to have my top 10 be filled with 5 Kiss albums, 3 Eagles albums, something like that. So only one album from each band allowed. So yes, maybe these aren't my actual top 10 because there would be more than one Kiss album in here, but for the sake of the show, for the sake of it being just a little bit different than my top Kiss albums of all time, just one band. And, of course, it had to be released in the 1970s. Now, greatest hits albums, I don't count those. It's not fair. It's not a real album. I also didn't count live albums because, again, live albums, for the most part, are a greatest hits album. So it had to be an all-original album. We'll start with my number 10. I was a little shocked at this myself. I thought Hotel California would be my favorite Eagles album, but really, when you compare them, there was one album that was just a tad stronger than Hotel California to me. The number 10 favorite album of the 1970s, the Eagles, Desperado.
They were dueling Dalton.
Desperado, the second studio album by the Eagles, was released in April 1973. This album marks a significant evolution in the band's musical journey, blending rock with country influences that creates a narrative theme based around the Old West and outlaws. The album opens with the track Duelin' Dalton, immediately setting the tone for the Wild West theme. Its haunting harmonica and melancholic lyrics introduce the listener to the world of the Duelin' Dalton gang, offering a perfect blend of country and rock elements. Another of the album's standout tracks is Tequila Sunrise, a beautiful ballad. Its smooth melodies and reflective lyrics have made it a timeless classic, and it really shows Glenn Frey's voice. Of course, the most iconic song on the album is the title track.
Desperado, why don't you come to your senses?
With its poignant lyrics and orchestral arrangement, Desperado is a masterpiece of emotional storytelling. I also love how the Duelin' Dalton song shows back up as a brief instrumental, and then also closes the album with a reprise of Desperado. It ties the narrative together and makes the album feel complete. The album's production, handled by Glenn Johns, is clean and polished, allowing the intricate arrangements and vocal harmonies to shine. The Eagles' songwriting is top-notch, with each track contributing to the overarching story. The musicianship is exceptional, with standout performances from all the band members. Next up is the only punk album on my top 10 of the 70s, and punk really exploded in the 1970s. It's often said that it was a response to disco, that everyone was getting sick of the commercialization, just how disco came about, and disco was just so safe. So punk rock came out and was everything that wasn't safe. Except with this band, they're considered punk. They would do 37 songs in a 45-minute live set. They're definitely a punk rock band, but they were far more melodic than your typical punk rock. They are my favorite punk rock band, and their debut album comes in at number 9, the self-titled debut of the Ramones. The Ramones' self-titled debut album came out in April of 1976 and is widely regarded as a cornerstone of punk rock. Clocking in at just under 30 minutes, the album's 14 tracks deliver a relentless barrage of raw energy, simplicity, and rebellious spirit. The Ramones' minimalist approach and blistering pace set the stage for a musical revolution, stripping rock music down to its bare essentials. Blitzkrieg Bop is a perfect introduction to the Ramones' sound. Then you go right into Beat on the Brat, Judy is a Punk, and I Want to Be Your Boyfriend. All songs with catchy sing-along choruses that combine humor and aggression in classic Ramones style. Other standout tracks include 53rd and 3rd, with Dee Dee Ramone taking lead vocals in a maybe autobiographical song about male prostitution and murder, as well as Let's Dance, a cover of the Chris Montez 1962 song. Probably my favorite song on the album is the closing track, Today Your Love, Tomorrow the World. But there isn't a weak song on the Ramones. Each track is a burst of energy with catchy hooks and straightforward lyrics that resonate with the band's DIY style. If I was surprised that the Eagles' Desperado was my favorite Eagles album, I was even more surprised that this next one was my favorite album by Black Sabbath. They had a lot of great albums in the 70s, a lot of strong albums, but really, this one was top to bottom their best. Coming in at number 8, Black Sabbath, Master of Reality. Released in 1971, Master of Reality was Sabbath's third album and is often hailed as one of the most influential records in the development of doom metal. Opening with the sound of Tony Iommi's cough, Sweet Leaf plunges into a sludgy riff that is both heavy and hypnotic. The song is a love letter to marijuana, with Ozzy Osbourne's raw and earnest vocals capturing the counterculture of the era. It's followed up by one of the band's most underrated songs, After Forever. Which features religious lyrics, which was atypical for Black Sabbath. Well, at least lyrics that were about God and not Satan. But the standout track from the album is Children of the Grave. It's a powerful anthem with a galloping rhythm and a rebellious spirit. The song's lyrics reflect the political unrest of the time, calling for social change and resistance against oppression. The production by Roger Bain is raw and unpolished, which adds to the album's authenticity and visceral impact. Master of Reality is a masterclass in heavy metal, with the album's innovative use of down-tuned guitars, heavy riffs, and thematic depth, setting the stage for the development of doom metal and influenced countless bands that followed. Number 7 is an album that the story behind the album just makes it even better. I mean, when you have a band that's made up of a lot of couples and then they start breaking up with each other, they're cheating on each other, they're like all kinds of stuff happening, and then they start writing songs about their significant other or their ex, and it gets out and just people are like, I can't wait to hear what they're doing. This thing could be a greatest hits album because almost every song on it is well known, gets radio airplay. It's one of the highest selling albums of all time. Coming in at number 7, Fleetwood Mac, Rumors.
You can go your own way.
When I said that Rumors was basically a greatest hits album, just listen to the names of the songs on it. Secondhand News, Dreams, Never Going Back Again, Don't Stop, Go Your Own Way, Songbird, The Chain, You Make Loving Fun, I Don't Want to Know, Oh Daddy, and Gold Dust Woman. Almost every single one of those songs got massive radio play and were huge hits. I've always preferred the Lindsey Buckingham tracks from Fleetwood Mac, and this album is no different.
I know nothing to say. Someone has taken my place when time.
Secondhand News opens the album, and at first you think it's a cheerful song, until you realize it's all about pain and breakup, and that sets the stage. Never Going Back Again really showcases Buckingham's underrated guitar skills. Go Your Own Way is a raw, emotional, and a definitive breakup anthem. But it's The Chain that is the album's greatest accomplishment.
And if you don't love me now, you will never love me again. I can't.
With its haunting bass line, dynamic shifts, and harmonized vocals, the track builds tension and release masterfully. The song's iconic instrumental break and climactic ending make it a powerful centerpiece of the album. But each track on Rumors contributes to the album's cohesive narrative of love, heartbreak, and resilience. The band's ability to channel their personal struggles into their music creates an emotional authenticity that resonates with listeners. Decades after its release, Rumors remains a cultural touchstone and a testament to Fleetwood Mac's enduring legacy in the world of rock music. Coming up one of these days, this is one of the bands that I plan on doing a ranking of their top 10 albums because they have so many. They have consistently been putting out great music for, 50, 60 years. Is pretty impressive. The Rolling Stones, obviously, were going to have an album in my top 10. They probably would have had a couple in my top 10, but because I made the rule there can only be one, it's this one. Coming in at number 6, The Rolling Stones, Sticky Fingers. The Rolling Stones really played around with different musical genres throughout their careers, and I think Sticky Fingers truly is the perfect version of that. It blends classic rock, blues, and country into a seamless, iconic collection of songs. It opens with Brown Sugar's unmistakable riff. It was probably a controversial song when it was released, and even more so now in our what can I be offended about today society. But Mick Jagger just doesn't give a shit, and that attitude cements it as a classic anthem. Wild Horses is probably the Stones' all-time greatest ballad. It's an acoustic-driven song that showcases the band's softer side. Can't You Hear Me Knocking, Bitch, and Sister Morphine are all classic songs. And just listening to Sticky Fingers is like being in a Scorsese movie. The album ends super strong with the 1-2 punch of Dead Flowers, a great Stones country song, and Moonlight Mile, a majestic ballad that grows to a huge climax. What a way to finish an album.
I am sleeping under strange skies. Just another madman.
The production by Jimmy Miller captures the band's essence, from the gritty rockers to the soulful ballads. Each member of the band is at the top of their game, with standout performances that highlight their individual talents while contributing to the album's overall brilliance. Sticky Fingers is a defining moment in the Rolling Stones' career, showcasing their ability to blend diverse musical styles into a cohesive and compelling whole. The album's raw energy, emotional depth, and musical innovation have ensured its place as one of the greatest rock albums of the 70s, and really all time. Next up is an album that I really think changed the music industry. Much like the way that punk was shaking things up, this band and this album really brought hard rock back to the mainstream. It made a lot of kids pick up guitars and try to learn to play guitar. It made guys want to be cool. It really started, I think, the Sunset Strip heavy metal scene, which really gave birth to hair metal, which everyone knows I love. But coming in at number 5, one of the best rock albums ever made, the self-titled debut of Van Halen. Van Halen's self-titled debut album is a seismic event in the history of rock music, marking the arrival of a band that would redefine the genre with its raw energy, virtuosic guitar work, and charismatic stage presence. Released in 1978, this album not only catapulted Van Halen to stardom, but also set a standard for hard rock and heavy metal. It opens with one of the all-time great opening tracks with Runnin' with the Devil. Michael Anthony's bass line creates a foreboding sense of urgency, and then we are right into David Lee Roth's commanding vocals and Eddie Van Halen's innovative guitar. Oh, and speaking of innovative guitar, the very next thing you hear is Eruption. Clocking in at just over a minute and a half, Eruption is an instrumental tour de force that changed the way guitar solos were even perceived. Eddie Van Halen's blistering finger-tapping technique and rapid-fire licks display his technical prowess and creativity, establishing him as one of the greatest guitarists of all time. This goes right into You Really Got Me, a dynamic cover of the Kings classic that takes the original's raw energy and amplifies it with Van Halen's signature flair. Eddie's guitar riff, Alex Van Halen's pounding drum, and David Lee Roth's exuberant vocals create a high-octane rendition that stands on its own merits. Ain't Talking About Love and I'm the One finish off side one, and it's one of the best A-sides to any album. When side 1 is that strong, it's hard for side 2 to compare, and while it's not as strong, you still get Jamie's Cryin', Atomic Punk, Feel Your Love Tonight, and Ice Cream Man. I have to say though that one of their big songs I never cared for was On Fire. I know some fans love it, but it never really grabbed me. Van Halen's debut album is a landmark release that redefines the boundaries of rock music. The band's combination of the virtuoso guitar, the charismatic frontman, and the innovative songwriting set a new standard for hard rock and heavy metal. As I mentioned, the Rolling Stones would probably have more than one album on my list. For a fact, I know that Led Zeppelin would have had more than one album on my list. I'm not sure how many, but they would at least have 2. But because I limited it to only one album, it's probably the one that a lot of hard rock fans will roll their eyes. Ugh, it's the most mainstream Led Zeppelin album. It's the highest selling Led Zeppelin album. It's the one that people that don't know Led Zeppelin know. But that doesn't mean it's not their best album. It doesn't mean that it's not fantastic. Yes, Stairway to Heaven is overplayed. But remember the first time you heard it? The first time you were blown away by it? Think about that and think about how the whole album, song after song after song, was perfect. That's why, coming in at number 4, is Led Zeppelin's album, 4.
Hey, mama said the way you move gonna make you.
So technically the album is untitled, and I've heard it called Untitled 4th Album by Pretentious Pricks and Zozo by Idiots, but it's commonly called Led Zeppelin 4, and that's what I'm going to call it too. It is truly a monumental achievement in rock music, and I think this was the icing on the cake, or the mud shark and the groupie, that made Led Zeppelin one of the biggest rock bands of all time. It opens with Robert Plant's commanding vocals, followed by Jimmy Page's iconic riff in Black Dog, and that heads right into John Bonham's recognizable drums with Rock and Roll. It's an exhilarating ride from start to finish, embodying the raw power of Zeppelin's live performances. Of course, I have to mention Stairway to Heaven, arguably the most famous track on the album, and one of the most famous songs ever made. It's truly a masterclass in musical progression and storytelling. The song begins with a delicate acoustic guitar intro and gradually builds to a powerful, electrifying climax. The funny thing, though, is that my introduction to Led Zeppelin was with the closing track, When the Levee Breaks. But not from Led Zeppelin. as it was sampled in Rhymin' and Stealin' by the Beastie Boys. I was hooked by that drum beat and had to do research, way before the internet made that easy, to track down where it came from. Bonham's colossal drum sound, achieved through innovative recording techniques, drives the song's relentless groove. The song's apocalyptic imagery and sonic intensity make it a fitting conclusion to the album. Produced by Jimmy Page, the album captures the essence of Led Zeppelin's sound while pushing the boundaries of what rock music could achieve. Led Zeppelin 4 is a tour de force that showcases the band's unparalleled musical prowess and creative vision. My top 3 albums are all perfect. They're all 3 in my top 10 albums ever made. It's really hard to kind of decide which of these 3 is better than the others. What's funny is that 2 of these 3, it's the album production that really carries it. 2 of these 3, the production is flawless. Yes, the songs are magnificent. The bands, the musicians are magnificent, but the production is what carries it up a level. My number 2, not so much. There's actually very little production on it, but it's just because of how much I love that album. But number 3, production is great. It's one of the most famous, overly produced albums. And I don't mean that in a bad way, like current music is overproduced. This was overproduced because they took the tape and they kept running it back and back and back until they were wearing holes in it. It's that magnificent of an album. And yes, Bohemian Rhapsody gets all of the attention for the production on that. But for my money, the Prophet song is even more of a masterpiece, with the layers upon layers upon layers of vocals, the different shifts in musicianship. My number 3 favorite album of the 70s, Queen, A Night at the Opera. One of the things that makes A Night at the Opera so great is that no 2 songs are alike. It'll give you whiplash if you don't hang on, as you'll go from hard rock to vaudeville to pop to folk to cabaret to progressive rock and to, well, Bohemian Rhapsody and then back again. It really showcases the band's versatility, virtuosity, and theatrical flair. It opens with the haunting piano of Death on Two Legs, and that builds to a fierce rock anthem dedicated to the band's former manager, that flows into Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon, which evokes a 1920s feel, and then bam, right into Roger Taylor's I'm in Love with My Car, which is really exactly what you think it is. Then you get the fun pop hit You're My Best Friend, before going to my favorite song on the album, Brian May's 39.
Don't you hear my call? Though you're many years away. Don't you hear me calling you? Roger.
It's a folk rock ballad with a science fiction twist, telling the story of space explorers who return to find a century has passed. It's basically Christopher Nolan's Interstellar in musical form. Sweet Lady and Seaside Rendezvous take us from rock to cabaret, and then leads to the song I talked about earlier, the Prophet Song, an epic progressive rock piece and one of Queen's most ambitious tracks.
Oh, people of the earth, listen to the warning the seer he said. Beware the storm that gathers here. Listen to the wise man.
Brian May's intricate guitar work, Freddie Mercury's multi-tracked vocal harmonies, and the song's dark lyrics create a dramatic and immersive listening experience. The a cappella section in the middle adds a haunting, ethereal quality. That leads into Love of My Life, one of the band's best ballads and some of Freddie's best vocal work, which then heads into the Dixieland of Good Company, and then the song everyone knows, Bohemian Rhapsody. Its complex harmonies, dramatic dynamics, and iconic guitar solo have cemented it as one of the greatest songs in rock history. Then we finish off with the instrumental God Save the Queen, which is a majestic finale to the album. A Night at the Opera is a masterpiece that captures the essence of Queen's innovative spirit and musical skills. It blends genres from rock and opera to folk and cabaret, and showcases the band's ability to push boundaries and defy expectations. Coming in at number 2, you knew there'd be a Kiss album on here. I had mentioned them, everyone knows they're my favorite band of all time. They would probably really Rock and Roll Over and Destroyer should have been in the top 10, but with the rules I gave myself, it has to be my favorite Kiss album of all time. Coming in at number 2, Kiss's self-titled debut, Kiss.
Get up and get your grandma out of here.
Kiss's self-titled debut album is a high-energy introduction to the band's raw sound and flamboyant persona, laying the foundation for their rise as rock and roll icons. Released in 1974, the album captures the essence of Kiss's live performances, packed with infectious hooks, gritty guitar riffs, and larger-than-life attitudes. It opens with Strutter. The album doesn't let up then with Nothing to Lose and Firehouse, both classic Kiss numbers, which lead to the Ace Frehley written Cold Gin. The song's heavy riff and straightforward structure highlight Frehley's knack for writing hard-hitting rock tunes, and it quickly became a fan favorite. Let Me Know and Kissin' Time finish off the A-side, and the B-side really opens and closes strongly with Deuce, one of Kiss's most enduring songs, and possibly the greatest closing song on any album, Black Diamond.
Hit it!
In the middle, you have Kiss's worst ever song, the love theme from Kiss, as well as one of their songs I've never liked, 100,000 Years. But the strength of all the songs on the album I love more than make up for these two weaker songs. As I mentioned, the production is basically non-existent, as it sounds like they just set up some mics and let the band play. Despite its initial modest reception, the album's impact has grown over time, providing a glimpse into the early days of a band that would go on to become rock legends. It's my favorite album by my favorite band, and my second favorite album of the 1970s. So with Kiss being my favorite band of all time, and their debut being my number 1 Kiss album of all time, what the hell album in the 70s is even better? What could have beaten every other album released in the 70s, and there's so many great ones. There is an album that I think is completely perfect, a masterpiece. Each song is a journey. The funny thing is that it's the songwriter that gets all of the credit for this and not the album producer. People even forget that Todd Rundgren produced this album. Jim Steinman was even hired to produce Def Leppard's Hysteria because of how great this album was. That didn't work out because obviously he wasn't the producer. He was the songwriter, and that didn't help Def Leppard. But Todd Rundgren took this album, took what was a bunch of genius songs with one of the greatest rock vocalists of all time, and made this masterpiece. The greatest album of the 1970s. It's right here on my shirt. Meatloaf, Bat Outta Hell.
Like a bat out of hell, I'll be gone when the morning comes. But when the night is over, like a bat out of hell, I'll be gone, gone, gone.
Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell is a grandiose and theatrical rock opera that combines the soaring vocals of Meatloaf with the elaborate compositions of songwriter Jim Steinman and the flawless production of Todd Rundgren. Released in 1977, the album is a monumental achievement that transcends conventional rock music, blending elements of opera, Broadway, and hard rock into a singular, unforgettable experience. The album opens with its epic title track, an explosive 9-minute rock opera. Meatloaf's powerful vocals drive the narrative of youthful rebellion and escapism. The intricate instrumentation and dynamic shifts make it an exhilarating opener that sets the stage for the album's grand themes. This leads into the spoken word prologue if you took the words right out of my mouth, Hot Summer Night, which I paraphrased in my wedding vows.
on a hot summer night, would you offer your throat to the wolf with the red roses?
Yes.
I bet you say that to all the boys.
It quickly transforms into a catchy, up-tempo rock song with the infectious chorus and vibrant arrangement, showcasing Steinman's knack for crafting memorable hooks. Next comes Heaven Can Wait, a tender ballad that contrasts with the album's more bombastic moments. The album then returns to its rock roots with All Revved Up with No Place to Go, before getting back to the ballad feel of 2 out of 3 Ain't Bad.
I want you. I need you. But there ain't no way I'm ever gonna love you. Now don't be.
That song's poignant lyrics detailing a love that's not fully reciprocated resonate deeply. Of course, to my wife's dismay comes the song that I force her to sing karaoke with me all the time, Paradise by the Dashboard Light.
Stop right there. I gotta know right now. Before we go any further, do you love me?
A mini rock opera in itself, the song is a multi-part narrative that vividly depicts teenage romance and lust. The song's structure includes a baseball commentary section, a duet between Meat Loaf and Ellen Foley, and a climatic rock crescendo. Its theatricality and storytelling brilliance make it a highlight of the album. Then the album closes with the sweeping, beautiful, pure perfect ballad for Crying Out Loud.
And don't you hear me crying, I beg, don't go. And don't you hear me screaming, how was I to know? I'm in the middle.
Meat Loaf's passionate vocals are complemented by a rich orchestral arrangement. The song builds to a powerful climax, embodying all of the album's themes of love, heartbreak, and longing. Meat Loaf's vocal performance is nothing short of extraordinary, delivering Steinman's dramatic lyrics with raw and emotional intensity. Upon its release, Bat Out of Hell was initially met with mixed reviews, but quickly gained commercial success, becoming one of the best-selling albums of all time. And it remains a beloved classic in the rock genre, and it is my favorite album of the entire decade. What did I forget? I mean, with 14,392 albums released in the 70s, surely your favorite probably wasn't on my list. Or, if it was on my list, was it in the right place? Let me know. Shoot me a comment, leave me a message. What's your favorite album of the 70s? Should I have had some country on there? Some Johnny Cash, maybe? His 70s stuff wasn't that great, but he had some good stuff in there. How about Merle Haggard? How about some classic country like that? I didn't have Saturday Night Fever on there, should it? Let me know, what was I missing? Be sure and check out GaryTalks.tv. That's got links to all the audio podcasts, my Facebook page, which has exclusive videos, my Twitter page, all of that stuff. And I hate saying this because you all know, but if you watch this on YouTube, subscribe. Be sure and like it. The more subscriptions I can get, the more that this will show up in the algorithms and that sort of thing, and maybe other people will discover it, and then they'll be mad at me for my rankings. Be sure and join me next week as I talk about television, as I go over my top 10 favorite finales of all time. See you then.
Gary Talks Music. Gary Talks Music. Gary Talks Music.